All right. Good evening, all, and welcome to the Rhode Island Department of Environmental Management's free virtual community-centered workshop series, Climate Connections for Healthier, Stronger Communities. My name is Chris Gaynor. I use he, him pronouns, and I am the climate justice specialist with Rhode Island DEM, and I will be your MC for this evening. If you're comfortable, please share with us in the chat your name, where you're calling from, and how you found us. Let me give example. So like, you don't have to be the first, so I can be the first. There you go. And if you were here with us May 7th, like I think it was like some weeks ago, you may remember that we discussed the impacts of climate change, what work has been done across the state and at local levels. We had the Monostotucket River Watershed Council join us to share about that and how said actions connect us to a larger global engagement. This evening is our second workshop of this four-part series, and this workshop is Ensuring Clean Water for All. Our very own Jane Sawyers, an environmental scientist from the Office of Water Quality. She will guide us through how flooding, pollution, and clean water access are changing and how we may all help to protect our waterways. Later on this evening, we'll be joined by Director Mavi Pineda. She is the Director of Central Falls and Parks and Recreation Department. And she will share with us how, that got that local level, that, where that impact lies. And further when she comes on, we'll share a little bit more. A few housekeeping items is please save your questions until the end. I know the content this evening may spur some questions here and there, but please hold them until after our presentation or presentations. But do feel free to share your questions in the chat, so ensure we capture them and and speaking of the chat, feel free to use it. Like, feel free to use the chat as much as you want to, and I'll be in there every so often because some of this information is new to me as well. So I'm just like, whoa. And yeah, within that, be respectful because each of us are coming in with different levels of understanding, different levels of experience, different levels of knowledge, and it is a privilege to be in the space with all of you so we can learn together. And with that, I will pass the mic to Jane. Jane, please share with us about water. Yeah.
Great. Can you see my slides?
I think these are your slides.
Okay. You see the
Yeah.
the title page?
Yeah.
All right. Then I will get right into it. So welcome to everyone, and thank you for registering for today's discussion on Rhode Island's water quality. My name is Jane Sawyers, and I work in the Office of Water Resources. My job is to supervise water monitoring, assessment of water data, regulations, and water quality restoration studies. Today's presentation will go over water quality basics, how DEM safeguards our water resources, impacts on downstream developed watersheds, and what you can do to protect water quality. A note that I'll be talking about surface water only, so things like lakes and ponds, rivers and streams, and estuaries. For drinking water safety, DEM does evaluate how healthy, raw, untreated drinking water is before it's treated and moved through pipes to homes. But the delivery of safe drinking water to homes is regulated under the Department of Health's programs. My talk will cover what happens to water in the environment. So the first thing I'll talk about is how water moves and affects downstream communities. This picture shows a simplified water cycle. All water goes through all or part of the water cycle. The diagram shows all the paths water can take before it gets to our favorite beaches, fishing spots, and parks. Water travels from rain or ice, from upland areas in the mountains or hills, and always moves downstream. The lowest point of the landscape will collect water. Humans have figured out how to change water with dams and concrete, but water will always flow downstream. Along the way, water will interact with the landscape, and the impacts of the landscape will flow downstream, both good and bad. And this is a zoomed in view of where a lot of water pollution can happen. Water pollution can happen anywhere, but pollution problems are often concentrated in the downstream waters that tend to be more populated, where people and development happen. We at DEM are tasked with determining where water pollution is happening and reporting to the people on water pollution. Additionally, we are experiencing great change in the water cycle due to climate change. Increasing temperature increases evaporation from the oceans, creating increased precipitation and flooding in downstream areas, already densely populated, developed, while at the same time, other regions are experiencing increased evaporation from the land, leading to droughts. The changes in the water cycle can also affect pollution moving downstream at greater rates. So I'm going to use the term water quality a lot throughout this presentation. So first we'll talk a little bit about what water quality means and how we measure it. So what is water quality? All water is of a certain quality. The quality of the water is defined by features like its chemical makeup and the life it supports. How we measure water quality depends on how we plan to use it, either drinking, swimming, paddling, or fishing. The type of water quality we expect starts with what does the land look like, as was shown in the water cycle. Water in the mountains is naturally going to be different than water in forests, cities, and other landscapes. First, we measure the physical parts of water bodies by what type of trees and plants are on the shore, what we call the buffer. We also measure how deep and wide the water body is. And then what type of geology, meaning the rocks that are under the landscape, can truly affect the type of water that we expect in our water bodies. And also, we want to know how humans are impacting the water quality conditions. Are there dams or other man-made structures nearby? This can tell us a lot about what the quality of the water should be. Next, we measure the chemistry of the water, things we can analyze in a laboratory that aren't always visible to the eye. These can be good things, like dissolved oxygen for aquatic animals to breathe and nutrients for plants and organisms to grow. Or they can be harmful things, like toxics and turbidity, meaning how cloudy or muddy is the water. Or for people recreating, how much harmful bacteria is in the water. These measurements will tell us a lot about if the water is healthy for people to recreate and for aquatic animals to live and reproduce. We also want to directly measure what aquatic animals are using the water and how healthy they are. So we collect aquatic insects or bugs and fish. What types are they? How big are they? Are they healthy? Basically like a doctor's checkup. As I mentioned, DEM is responsible for identifying water pollution and reporting on it to the people. We also have a role in protecting and restoring the waters. As Rhode Island's Water Pollution Control Agency, DEM is delegated by the US EPA to implement large portions of the Federal Clean Water Act. The main goal of the Federal Clean Water Act is to restore the chemical, physical, and biological integrity of the nation's waters, which, as you'll recall, is how we measure water quality and directly relates to measuring progress towards this goal. And you should note that the nation's water goals is inclusive of all waters, not those in currently good condition. The goal is for all waters to be healthy. Everyone should have clean water. The Federal Clean Water Act also requires establishing water quality standards for the state's waters, which are in the water quality regulations developed and maintained by DEM, along with developing goals and metrics to track progress on water quality. Additionally, the Clean Water Act requires DEM to monitor, assess, and report on water quality conditions. One way DEM fulfills this reporting is by developing an integrated report on the state's water quality, essentially a report card for how the waters are doing in Rhode Island. This includes developing the list of impaired waters, meaning they're polluted waters. These are waters that are not meeting our water quality goals and require a scheduled study and plan for water quality restoration. These plans are referred to as TMDLs, total maximum daily loads, essentially a recipe for a healthy water body that DEM develops. Managing water quality isn't a straight line. This framework shows how multiple programs at DEM's Office of Water Resources, where I work, all work towards accomplishing the goals of the Federal Clean Water Act. There are lots of feedback loops to reevaluate clean water for all. It's not a one and done process. There are other offices and divisions who also have important roles at DEM in water quality. But in this diagram, I'm focusing on the Office of Water Resources. Like I mentioned, the Clean Water Act requires each state to adopt water quality standards and to establish routine monitoring programs. The data generated from monitoring is then used to develop categorical assessments for each water body based on those regulations. Assessments are then used to prioritize watershed restoration plans, which in turn help to direct water quality management resources for both regulated and unregulated stakeholders. As we'll notice, there is an off-ramp to other regulatory programs, such as permits, non-point source prevention and mitigation, and financial assistance. Where we can bring waters back into compliance with other management strategies, we'll use other tools in our clean water toolbox. And on top of this water quality management framework is public participation. Public participation is an integral part of this framework. DEM's Office of Water Resources holds public comment hearings and workshops on water quality standards, the regulations that define what our goals and measurement standards are, the impaired waters listings, the TMDLs, and as requested, permits. Additionally, a lot of the monitoring data we use to determine the water quality for assessments is volunteer data, especially for lakes and ponds. With all of this work, how healthy are Rhode Island's waters? What are the problems that we face? Every other year, DEM is required by the Federal Clean Water Act to assemble all data from the last 5 years and evaluate and report on how Rhode Island's waters are doing. We break out and report on each water type, our rivers and streams, lakes and ponds, and estuaries. These are locations where the rivers meet the ocean, where the water's a little bit salty, like our Narragansett Bay. For all waters, we have data and are able to measure water quality on most waters. This is the first line of percentages. For rivers, 81% of rivers have data that we can determine how healthy they are. lakes and ponds, 84%, and estuaries, 98%. The line underneath shows how many waters are impaired, meaning how many of our waters are polluted. Approximately half of rivers and streams and ponds and lakes, and approximately a third of estuaries have some pollution problem. And of those pollution problems, the very last line shows how many need a TMDL water quality study. And approximately a third of all waters are scheduled for this water quality restoration study. The other pollution issues are better addressed through other management efforts. For 2024 reporting cycle, the top pollution issues for each water type have some similarities. Nutrients, bacteria, and non-native aquatic plants are common among rivers, lakes and ponds, and estuaries. But additionally, metals, mercury in fish tissue, and sediment toxicity are also pollution problems in Rhode Island surface waters. So how is DEM working to solve these pollution problems? I'm going to walk through two case studies of long-suffering polluted rivers where the regulatory process worked and brought the rivers back into compliance with our water quality standards. This map shows the Patuxent River main stem with 3 red circles on the blue line, which is the Patuxent River main stem, and the 3 red circles show 3 wastewater treatment facilities, and a triangle further up that's purple in the top right-hand corner, showing a monitoring station on the river. The red lines going through the map you'll see are Highway 95 crossing the Patuxent River. The Patuxent River had long-standing problems related to over-enrichment and pollution. A Boston Globe article from the 1890s documents the complaints of open sewage discharge and black slime covered banks. Over time, and due to the Clean Water Act requirements, open discharge was removed and requirements for treatment of waste were in place. However, the pollution due to nutrients not fully treated from the wastewater treatment facilities allowed habitat degradation related to excessive plants and low dissolved oxygen to proliferate on the Patuxent. So we'll walk through the decades that it took to bring the Patuxent back into compliance with our regulations. Although it's been going on for a long time, DEM formally identified the nutrient pollution on the impaired waters list in 1994. In June 2000, DEM reissued the RIPDES permit for the West Warwick, and Cranston wastewater treatment facilities, with requirements to reduce the nutrients discharged to the Patuxent River. Construction of advanced treatment upgrades was completed at all 3 municipal wastewater treatment facilities between November 2004 and July 2006. DEM was able to remove the Patuxent River main stem dissolved oxygen impairment in 2008 based on data collected in the summer of 2008 following those first treatment upgrades. But there were still issues, and in 2008, DEM also reissued the permits for the 3 wastewater treatment facilities, continuing to lower the allowable nutrients to further reduce habitat degradation. Construction was complete again, and limits were met at all 3 facilities between October 2016 and July 2018. And in our 2022 reporting cycle, DEM was able to remove the nutrient impairment from the Patuxent River, demonstrating that the water had been brought back into good health. It still has some impairments that we further need to work on, but aquatic life is much healthier today than it was during the black slime covered era of the 1890s. Another case that I'll walk through is the Blackstone River, which has a similar story of a long history of pollution. The map shows the Blackstone River in blue in Rhode Island, with red circles showing wastewater treatment facilities in Massachusetts and Rhode Island. And also showing the yellow triangles are monitoring stations in Massachusetts, and orange circles are DEM sampling stations where we monitor water quality. The Blackstone River flows south into Central Falls and ultimately into Providence and Narragansett Bay. As I mentioned, the Blackstone River also has a long history of pollution issues, with centuries of industrial pollution. The Federal Clean Water Act has addressed many issues, but pollution problems persisted. DEM initially listed the Blackstone River as impaired for dissolved oxygen and nutrients in 1996 and 1998. In the late 1990s, extensive modeling of the river determined that seasonal advanced treatment at the treatment facilities was needed in order to bring the river back into health. In 2008, DEM reissued the permits for the Woonsocket wastewater treatment facility, and EPA reissued permits for the Massachusetts Worcester facility called the Upper Blackstone Water Pollution Abatement District, which required advanced treatment to reduce phosphorus. In 2013, EPA reissued permits for the Grafton, Northbridge, and Uxbridge, Massachusetts facilities. Woonsocket met their lower phosphorus permit limit beginning in the summer of 2017, with the Upper Blackstone District significantly reducing their nutrient load beginning in the 2015 summer season. In 2020, DEM was able to remove the pollution listing for the Blackstone River for total phosphorus and dissolved oxygen. So those case studies relied on DEM's regulatory role. So what can people do to protect and restore waters in their neighborhoods? As we talked about in the very first slides, buffers are the trees, shrubs, and rocks that protect waterways from pollution, erosion, and shade them from overheating. Allowing these riverbanks to remain natural with native plants keeps streams healthy. The top picture shows a very altered, unhealthy stream prone to pollution, and the bottom shows how the stream is protected by the vegetation, keeping shade and cool and reducing the pollution that can run off into the water, while keeping the stream banks from eroding, meaning that the sides are washed away into the river. Any kind of trash is harmful, and especially for waterways, the release of aquarium pets and plants can overtake a water body. It's actually illegal to feed waterfowl and wildlife in Rhode Island, and it's unhealthy for the animals. Feeding bread or other human food to animals is unhealthy and doesn't provide the nutrients they need. Additionally, attracting the animals to a feeding spot increases the pollution entering the pond, increasing harmful bacteria for recreation and causing toxic algal blooms, which also impacts wildlife and recreation. Dumping waste or oils down storm drains damages pipes and treatment infrastructure and ultimately ends up in our waterways. Pet waste can harbor significant amounts of harmful bacteria, washing into the water bodies after rain, making recreation difficult, if not impossible. And lastly, participate. DEM has several ways to voice public comments, and in many cases, it's required under the Federal Clean Water Act to solicit public comments. DEM announces public workshops and holds public hearings on the water quality regulations integrated report results, and if requested on permits. Comments can be received by email, letter, or phone call in most instances. Some issues that might generate a lot of public input might use a form to submit comments. Also, I'll note we take both positive and negative comments. If you support what we're doing, let us know. If you don't support something we're doing, let us know. We mostly hear the second, but it's also important for us to know when people support the issues that are important to them. And additionally, we use volunteer data to develop our water quality reports, and many watershed groups have volunteer cleanups and other opportunities to impact our water resources. And for an upcoming opportunity to participate that's coming, DEM has been working on several fronts on Valley Falls Pond, a water body connected to the Blackstone River in Central Falls. Valley Falls Pond is impacted by high nutrients, bacteria, lead, and low dissolved oxygen, meaning it's not healthy for aquatic animals or people. Additionally, an invasive plant called water chestnut has covered the surface of the water, further impacting Valley Falls Pond. And Valley Falls Pond is in the picture in the middle, shooting off from the Blackstone River. The City of Central Falls and DEM have been working closely to manage the water chestnut, and EPA is supporting a sampling effort that concluded a couple of weeks ago. And later, they'll be working with us on a mathematical modeling effort to determine the causes of the nutrient, oxygen, and bacteria in pollution, which will ultimately lead to a TMDL report on how to bring Valley Falls Pond water quality back into health. Over the next years, DEM will work to complete the Valley Falls Pond TMDL study, which will have workshops and an ability to comment on the study. So keep an eye out for an opportunity to learn and participate in bringing a local water body back to health. And at this time, I'll send it back to our moderator to open for questions.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you so much, Jane. Like, it was really cool to see what how involved like water quality is, and how much work like DEM like does within that space. Like I personally like learned a lot. In regards to, you know, like how connecting into like the community, like all I kept thinking about while you were talking, especially as like we went over the Blackstone River briefly, and I even asked folks like, you know, what river they lived near. And like I had lived near I still live near the Woonasquatucket when I first moved here 3 years ago. I'm a Florida boy, so like I love the beach, I love being in the water, I love jumping into just random canals. Don't ask. But
I won't.
both it, yeah. But in coming here, right? Like I had like been ecstatic that I lived near a river that was just honestly it looked really cool. Like a beautiful greenery and whatnot. But then I had asked someone who was a local and said, like, yeah, don't go in there. Yeah, what do you mean? Like, and they started listing to me all the pollutants and the history and the industries that had existed. And I guess like shout out to the Woonasquatucket River Watershed Council, because they've been folks that have been really, really engaged in trying to get folks to like clean up from like the local only build level. Is our Central Falls person here with us? Uh, Unfortunately, it seems our partner couldn't join us this evening, or they might be on their way. But while we're still like here together, I do want to like reflect on like that all waters like should be healthy according to the Clean Water Act, as Jane had shared. Um, then oh yeah, Jane, could you
Yep,
stop? Yep, great.
I can, I will back up, um, pardon my just rapid fire backwards, but
Close your eyes, everyone.
yeah, it'll be
It's as
better
pleasant.
than sharing and unsharing. Up, I think we
Yeah,
are,
that was it.
I can leave this slide up. Is this the one you were thinking about?
I think yeah, that that
Okay.
that, that feels good. But yeah, just like for just leaving it here, mostly to show the representation of like Central Falls, like Park and Recreation Department, who like as you can see, they engage with like the youth on the water for the Blackstone Valley River. They're engaged with outdoor recreation, environmental education, and they have a variety of programs like year round to essentially have like the residents of Central Falls be a part of, the natural environment. And how can they be a part of that natural environment without ensuring its safety, right? So there is that degree of like to me, it's like a twofold of where like it is the larger scale of like DEM ensuring that at like, all waters are okay, but it's truly community who kind of like signal that are the waters okay though? Like to really make that signal to where Jane had said that like, all feedback, like or any sort of like, issues that may arise, just like, let us know.
It looks
And
like Melanie
yeah,
is here. If you'd like to
maybe.
turn
Cool,
it over to her.
cool. Yes, please.
I am
Uh,
indeed. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. Go ahead.
no, welcome, welcome. Go ahead.
We actually work with the Central Falls Youth Kayak Program. Our kayak manager, Amanda Mograss, does their programs for that. We also offer a river classroom program that goes out onto the river, both on the shore and out on a boat, where the kids get to do a little bit of simple water monitoring and testing. Things like macroinvertebrates, we do plankton tows and very simple water testing, like dissolved oxygen, pH level, of course, because that's one most kids can understand as well. And a few other very simple tests. We have more advanced ones for upper level children that do, nitrites, nitrates, phosphate, iron, and a couple other simple tests for them to do too. So we're on the Blackstone. So I can't speak to the Woonasquatucket stuff, but we are on the Blackstone. And as I put in the chat there, we work with the Keep Blackstone Valley Beautiful, which is an offshoot of the ZAP program, which did the huge cleanup in 1972. Was the first and the largest single day cleanup of any waterway in this country before or since, where they pulled 10,000 tons of debris out of the Blackstone River. Like I said, everything
Wait,
from
how
a
much?
school bus, 10,000
Yes.
tons, not pounds, tons of
Hold on. How many
debris.
elephants is that? Give me a
I,
second.
an average elephant is what, like like a ton, 2 tons
Yeah,
maybe.
yeah, yeah. Hold
So
on. Yeah.
yeah, it's a lot. But they were pulling things like entire school buses out of the Blackstone River, and tires, and a lot of debris. I'm sure everybody knows that most waterways were acceptable dumps for a lot of things, not just the textile factories that were along the Blackstone River that dumped their dyes and other effluvia into the river during the Industrial Revolution. And even post-Industrial Revolution, the river was a dump. And Jane went over how they've really helped to the water quality monitoring, going after specifically the Woonsocket treatment plant up there that had significant issues in the past during heavy rainfalls with overflow. And the DEM going up there and really, really cracking down with the monitoring has made a big difference in the river. Now stormwater runoff and of course fertilizer runoffs are the big ones, as again Jane alluded to, from homes that are putting stuff on their lawns or whatever else are the big challenges in any river.
And I put a link to Zap the Blackstone in the chat. It's an amazing what people did with, and they did PBS did a I think it was a 50th anniversary show, and I actually ended up being interviewed for it. I was not there in
Oh, neat. Shout
1972,
out.
but there's a really great program that they showed some of the old news clips of people pulling this stuff out of there that I don't know how they did it. So it's a really great
Yeah,
history story.
it's amazing. There's actually a 16 millimeter restored film that Blackstone Valley
Right.
Tourism Council did restore. Maybe that's what you're referring to there. And that you can see them, and it was coordinated along the Blackstone all the way from Worcester straight through to Providence. This cleanup was done. It was done over the entire 48-mile length of the river in a single day. They also created a lot of the greenway parks that are along there. And again, I'm sure the other Central Falls people can attest to, it's where the new bike path is going in that runs, the bikeway that runs, that will eventually run from Providence all the way to Worcester, is now part of that too, part of that greening of the Blackstone. So they've done, you know, the Zap the Blackstone, yeah, did an amazing amount of work to get that started. I mean, everybody here is in the same field, so you know, you're well aware that, you know, first Earth Day was in 1971. So this was at the very beginning of the whole environmental movement, and the beginning of the you know, the Clean Water Act in 1972 is what helped to spur people to get out there and clean up the Blackstone. And yes, I did, Jane, I did see you in the 50th anniversary interview. I saw it online the other day. The doing, you know, how they've done a lot to clean up. It's a little bit shift in now what needs to be targeted for cleanup. Some of it is, you know, the heavy metals from the dyes from the factories is something that will always be problematic because it's caught in the sediment. But the monitoring that the DEM does has really cracked down on a lot of the other effluvia that ends up in the river. They really do a great job with doing that. It is, I believe, a Class C river still, although Jane, maybe you can, excuse me,
What's a
attest to
Class
this.
C?
Class C means it's cleared for recreational boating and catch and release fishing.
Okay.
I was told this weekend, and again, Jane, maybe you can attest to this. I don't know how accurate it is, but I was told that now you can eat fish from that river as long as you're not eating the guts and you're not eating bottom feeders like carp or catfish. If you're eating trout or bass or something like that, but that didn't sound right. So I'm glad you're here. Maybe you can
Sure.
attest to that. I don't know, or where I can find that and cross-reference that, because that was somebody from I can't, I think it was the Watershed Coalition saying that they had heard that, but again, I won't pass on information I can't confirm.
Sure. So first the Class C, I'll answer Chris's question. So our goals, when we put them in our regulations, we assign, even though we want clean, healthy waters for all, we have different buckets we put them in and what the numeric goals are. So what the numbers should be, what they should look like. And we have Class AA is our drinking water, Class A, Class B, and then there's Class B1, which are our waters where wastewater treatment facilities do go into them. They are treated wastewater, but there still could be impacts from those discharges on those waters. We still they were a Class C for a very long time, but the Class C classification, EPA, I think it was early 2000s, decided that didn't truly meet the goals of the Clean Water Act. And so we upgraded a lot of waters to either B, A, or B1, those waters where there is a facility. So that outlines what numbers we expect we should find in the waters. So we would expect the Blackstone River to be a B1 water. So the second part of that, on the fishing consumption, there are statewide advisories for mercury and fish tissue, but we've been working with the lead on this is the Department of Health as a public risk health organization. So they have been the ones who have been taking the lead on helping us to refine that, where there might be places that we can relax that fishing consumption. We haven't finalized those final fishing consumption, but we're in the process of it. And I can definitely get you in touch with the right person at Department of Health. So that person is working with us on that.
Cool.
That would be awesome. Thank you so
for
much.
Sure. Yeah. I
hope y'all connect.
I'll reach out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So first, Melanie, thank you for sharing everything that you shared. It's truly like, adds to how impactful community involvement and community engagement are, and like how you really work with youth. I wasn't thinking to myself, but when you were doing talking about the water quality tests, and just is there programs for children at heart, for grown adults to do the thing?
Absolutely.
What? Sorry,
Yes. No,
Okay,
I
cool. Yeah.
I do this for my job. I'm very lucky. So no,
Okay,
the
cool.
enthusiasm, I totally get it. So the University of Rhode Island volunteer program is the Watershed Watch program.
Mm,
Essentially, people adopt their local waterway, and uh, DEM does support the program, but it's run all through the University of Rhode Island, and people go out, they take their water samples. Unfortunately, we don't have a volunteer bug program, but I know some of the local watershed groups do collect, like Melanie mentioned, the Blackstone has programs where they do go out and collect some of the aquatic insects. Woonasquatucket, I
mm.
believe, does some as well. The Pawcatuck also has some programs where they're collecting and reaching out. You don't have to be a kid to show up.
Awesome.
But definitely, if
I've
you wanted
take
to get
yeah.
out to your local waterway, there are, and I know there, you said you lived on the Woonasquatucket. They
Hmm.
are very active in the Watershed Watch program. So there's a lot of volunteers out there, kids at heart, taking water samples.
Cool. So I've taken up enough space in asking Jane some questions. Is there anyone else here that has any curiosities and interests that they'd like to bring up? What do like the waters of Rhode Island mean to y'all? And since we're a small crew, feel free to just like unmute and, just say your name and start talking.
And Amanda did put the link to Watershed Watch in the chat.
It's Melanie again. I personally think one of the great things about Rhode Island waters, all the rivers and the beach and the programs that the DEM and Central Falls and that offer are an exceptional chance for people to inspire others to change behaviors, which I'm sure most of you are aware is the keystone to any of these cleanups and helping the projects that DEM are trying to promote people to use, is giving adults the tools and children to see their impact and then allow them to change their behaviors by understanding the science behind all of it, which is why I think that the programs that the watershed councils and Watershed Watch that my organization offers, that the DEM does, are so important to our waterways, and not just our rivers, but the estuary systems and beaches as well, is really inspiring people to take that moment to change their behavior. And it does work. I mean, when I take kids out on the river and they see things like bottles, they really get annoyed when they see plastic bottles on the river, because they're like, what, they couldn't pick it up and put it in a recycling bin? And that's if you think about it, I'm probably one of the older ones here, but when I was a kid, that wasn't something that you did. People just didn't think about that. They didn't think about where their bottle ended up or how it might impact something. So for kids to be looking at that and going, they couldn't walk the 10 feet to a trash can and throw it in, or they couldn't take it and put it in a recycling bin, that's a huge shift in behavior. And for those who do the education or do the testing, to be able to share that and continue to inspire people to maybe, let's not use fertilizer on our lawns because it's really just not that important. Let's instead plant things like clover and wildflowers that retain the soil and put natural nutrients back into the soil, so we don't have the, what is it, like 75% of what you put on your lawn or whatever runs off anyways. So we don't have that. Inspiring those little teeny tiny steps eventually get us from where 1972, where the Blackstone was essentially a dump, to 2025, where kids get really annoyed when they see something like a plastic bottle on the river. That's a profound societal shift in behavior. And we by doing what the DEM does, what Central Falls does, what any of our organizations does, it continues to impact and help to change behaviors going forward. And really that's what we need. We need the next generation of caretakers and stewards to be inspired by what the shift has been and see their way forward to continue with that shift. And I think because the state is small enough that kids can get a good cross section of how those things have happened. They can go to a beach and see, you know, an estuary or where beaches are maybe not as clean as they should be versus where they are now, that kind of thing. They can see a huge cross section of the state very easily, whether it's with their school or with their parent, and that really helps them to make those behavior chains that creates the next generations of stewards that are doing like my job or Jane's job or whatever, so that they're helping to keep those waters clean, allowing us to create, you know, help to get rid of water inequity, just like food inequity, get rid of water inequity, and you know, we've only got so much fresh water on this planet. I'm sure you guys all know those statistics. So to keep that going.
Thank you so much, Melanie, for sharing what you shared. You are appreciated. Before we close out, is there anyone else who want to share their own thoughts or ask, ask any questions you may have?
And I think I forgot to mention the QR code on the very last page would go to our to DEM's Office of Water Resources page. So if you scan that, that's where it's taking you. If you
I
wanted to know
believe
more
we are sharing
information.
out the slides,
Okay.
Or it's more information in regards, yeah. Okay. Well, seeing that no one's popping off and asking any questions, I am truly grateful to you, Jane, for being here. I am grateful to our interpreter here this evening, who I think her name's Monica. Yes, great. Who's helps us with interpretation. Thank you, our behind the scenes staff, and thank you to everyone who come out here this evening to hear about how water is just observed, monitored, taken care of, and like how we all can be amongst the continued I guess progress of making these waters like swimmable and be able to just eat from them, and it'd be great. So know that we are having our next Climate Connections June 4th. I will drop in the chat that information for y'all. Thank you to those who have joined us from the previous one. If this is your second time, thank you so much. If you're new, welcome. I'm really glad, and also I look forward to seeing y'all on the next one. I have nothing else to say. I appreciate you. Have a good one, everybody.